Are we ready to go?
We're ready.
Wonderful. Okay. My name is Molly Swartzoff, and I'm the Senior Vice President with Ray & Associates. I'm helping the president of our firm, Mr. Michael Collins, work with your board to select your next superintendent. So I will be facilitating the questions with Dr. Gonzalez. We have about 50 minutes. We'll first start off with a little intro, about 5 to 10 minutes, where Dr. Gonzalez can share a little bit about her and her history, and then we'll get started with the questions.
Very good. Well, first of all, I want to thank everyone for the opportunity that I've had to be here in Salt Lake City today, meeting with the different focus groups and being able to tour the district and see the schools and meet some staff. And it's truly been a pleasure to be here as one of the finalists. I have a variety of reasons to apply for the Salt Lake job, really 2 big reasons. I have grandchildren in the area, and I have 2 children in the Salt Lake Valley area. So yesterday when I flew in, I had the opportunity to get some snuggles in before today. And so I've been flying into Salt Lake for the past few years quite often in order to visit with family here. And the other thing that drew me to Salt Lake City was also the diversity and all the many things that you offer. My family is diverse. I've had diverse experiences living outside of the U.S. and studying abroad. And so I welcome to work with diverse staff and communities and student populations. And so early in my career, I had those opportunities. Where I'm working now currently isn't quite as diverse. And so I was longing for it to have that opportunity to be back around that. And so when you couple that along with grandchildren, it's like a win-win. So early on, I started my career in the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia, in a school district. I taught for 5 years there, and then our jobs took us down to the Richmond area. And so I went back to my alma mater, and I was able to teach alongside former teachers that I had, and that was quite a treat. And I taught for another 9 years. So I had 14 years in the classroom. 6 of those, I also worked as a department chair, and our high school was a center for English language learners. So I had the opportunity to really learn what that was like to learn the language and to struggle as a young person. We also had that experience in my personal life and witnessing someone as an adult trying to learn the English language. So I've lived it and I experienced it as a professional, and also being able to start the IB program at our school. So not only did I work with English language learners who were struggling to learn the language, it was also about working with IB and AP students and being able to open the opportunity up to all student populations. And one thing we did was incorporate native Spanish speaking courses for our students, because we felt like it was important that our Spanish speakers were also literate in their home language, and that they were able to have the opportunity to then go forward into AP literature classes and read about the great writers in their culture and to see their contributions in the humanities. And so that was a fun experience as we worked on closing the achievement gap and working on professional learning communities and having interventions built in the school day and looking at our grading practices and doing things differently to help all our children be successful, because it was a majority minority school. And so we had a lot of students with a lot of different ethnic backgrounds and speaking multiple languages in our building. From there, I transitioned into, after 14 years in the classroom, I then became the school improvement coach at that same building, really using data to dive in and dig into how we could close the achievement gaps even more and ensure that all our students were achieving and graduating with skill sets to take them on to the next phase of their life. From there, I went on to be a dean of students at a career technical center in Chesterfield County, wherein I was really able to embrace the CTE world and really see it up close and personal, the importance of having that academic foundation, but then also the skill set to apply it into these skills. And it was a wonderful opportunity. We were, before I left there, we were looking at expanding, and now it is expanded in Chesterfield County into 2 really sought after high flying programs where we offered a multitude of programs, but it really gave the students a chance to try on a career to see if they even liked it. From there, I was invited to go work as an assistant principal at an alternative high school where some of our most fragile children were elected or sent. We had 2 models of where they got to go there. And these were kids for whom a regular high school setting wasn't working for them. They had a lot of social emotional issues and some trauma in their life. And so it really took some extra hands and some care to work with our students there. But that also was majority minority school. And so with a lot of different communities being represented within that building. And so we worked with them to work on discipline and our best practices to make sure that we gave children a chance to to learn from their mistakes and to have the coping skills they needed to be productive citizens and to be able to cope when stressed, when life threw them little stress curveballs so they could be successful. And also working to build a student assistant team where we're able to get the resources to help them in their home lives and what was going on at home to make sure that they had those support systems in place. Together with that, we also worked on cultural proficiency at each of these schools to make sure that we all understood each other and were able to embrace each other's uniqueness and work together to understand the children we were serving. From there, I transitioned into, as data was a big part of my jobs and improving the schools and closing the achievement gaps at the school level, then I went on to take a position as the coordinator of accountability and assessments in Williamsburg. And I was invited to be down there, and I was in charge of state testing and all types of testing for the division, but also to improve the schools down there. And so I was able to train up other folks to be school improvement coaches and to really use the data to tell the story and to make the invisible visible as to what we thought we knew about our students and to really hone in our skill set there in Williamsburg. I was then invited, my direct report in Williamsburg went on to be a superintendent in Charles City County, and he invited me to go with him in Charles City County as his director of teaching, learning, and accountability, wherein it was a minority school division. And it was rural and small, but the beauty of that is I had the opportunity, because we had less people to help carry the load. I was responsible for a multitude of roles, and I had to do a lot of the groundwork, but was so rewarding because I was able to really have a close relationship with a lot of the teachers and the school administrators, and really to get to know the students and to really impact students' lives more directly through instruction and accountability and assessments, and have those processes in place to have an aligned system. We did a lot of good work there, working on grading practices and getting curriculum redeveloped down there, along with rolling out one-to-one initiative before it was the thing to do with the pandemic. So we kind of pride ourselves in that we were ahead of the curve there. And then came the time for me to explore other opportunities to be a superintendent. And I returned to the Shenandoah Valley in Page County. And I've been there for the last this is my third year there. And while it's not as diverse, it does have diverse with their social economic population. And there's a lot of impoverished families up there. And there are those who are very well off. So we have that diversity up there. And so working to put a lot of systems and practices in place and doing some good work to make sure that even with the lack of diversity and ethnicity, that we're still providing the equitable services for all our children up in Page County. So, and now that brought me to the point of looking to move closer to family, either in the Richmond area, back to the Richmond area, or, grandbabies here in the Salt Lake area. So that's what led me to explore other opportunities. And I have been drawn to Salt Lake because that is my spirit, as having that diversity and being able to work with diverse communities and populations.
Wonderful. Thank you. So the very first question, what do you believe is the top issue that school districts face today?
Equity. It really is about equity, because off of that becomes the social justice pieces. And it's about equity in our practices, equity in how we discipline, equity in how we grade, equity in what we offer, equity in how we build a master schedule, equity in where we have different programs offered at different schools, equity in how our students perform. When you look at the aggregate and you see the student data and it looks like it's right in line with other school divisions, and then you look at it and you go, wow, when you peel back the layers, you realize that in the last 6 years, when I was analyzing Salt Lake City data, that it's still a 30% to 40% spread between the subgroups. And that's usually the case in a lot of school divisions, that they're facing that is like, you have to really dig deeper and data mine all the way down to make sure and ensure that all our students are being successful at each level. And making sure that the equity is there at every level.
Wonderful. How will you manage potential disagreements amongst the board?
That comes in, there's a couple of things. First of all, you have to have some norms in place. We have to have that psychological safety where we can share our differing opinions, but a non-negotiable is that you have to be truthful, but use tact. There's a way to express one's views and to still be respectful of the positions that each of us hold and what we bring to the table. And also being courageous enough to call attention to that when we're not doing that, and that we need to be able to call attention to that if we're not staying in our lanes, if we're being ugly about something, that at the end of the day, it's about diversity in discussion, but unity in decision. And there are going to be times when some of us have to compromise and back off something, and we have to always look at it through the lens of what's best for students. Is this good for students? Is it educationally sound? Is it fiscally responsible? And not get in the weeds of the how so much, and let our team, let the central office team handle the how, but really give us the direction in the what and what we value, but also making sure that we tap each other and make sure that we're adhering to the norms and the agreements that we agreed to, so that we can portray the habits and how we interact with people is what we expect from our own staff. So if we wouldn't allow our staff to speak to us or us to speak to our staff, then we should surely not speak to each other that way either. We need to model the behavior that we expect from others in that respect.
What actionable steps will you take to ensure equitable access to social emotional learning and school mental health services are available to available to students, educators, and staff within the district?
Right. Well, with that is about being intentional. And so you have to look at the curriculum to make sure we being intentional about how we deliver the activities and the lessons, so that the children are given the skill sets they need to be able to work through the stress, the stresses that they're having in their life, that they have someone to turn to and to speak to. And so that's making it part of the school day. It's not just an afterthought. It's about being intentional and building up the skill sets that they need. And then it's about taking the time for self-care and having wellness days. And the same thing with the staff. It's about giving them that time to step back and breathe and to celebrate together. This is hard work that we're doing, and especially with a pandemic, but to have things in place so that they have the resources of where they can go. One thing we did is have the purple lanyards, where it was, we had staff that was trained up like in first aid mental health. So when a child was in crisis, they could just see a staff member with a purple lanyard and know that that was someone safe that they could go to speak to until we could get them to additional help that they needed. So having things in place like that, that people know they don't have to wander alone thinking what's out there for me. And also, is doing those same social and emotional activities with your staff. Your staff need to be able to express their feelings. They need to work through things as well. And then you need time to just let them have fun and be pampered sometimes and do those activities, but with intentionality. Same thing for students and for staff and even administrators. And that's something I've had to learn to do too, is to step back and do that self-care. And that's one of the reasons why I'm looking for jobs that'll put me closer to children, because we all need to have that unit of this group of people that we surround ourselves with to allow us to keep that mental health and that social emotional part in check in our personal lives.
Great. How do you plan to deal with and prevent bullying within the schools?
First of all, I have no tolerance for bullying, and we will deal with it head on. I think it comes in educating, and also back to, it goes to training the kids up to know how to interact, how to respond. So it's not making it okay, but you still need to train children up on how not to let that comment get under their skin. So it's twofold. It's about helping our children empower themselves and to have a voice and how to deal with things that are flowing their way, but also to discipline the child and help grow them, not to be punitive, but to sometimes there are consequences with the choices that they make, and they need to understand that. But we also have to take the time to grow them so it doesn't perpetuate. Because sometimes, children say they're sorry, but it's more about, are you sorry you got caught? Are you sorry you're sorry? And so you have to differentiate between that and grow them so that they have the skill set to better understand their classmates and not bully, and let them understand. And it's about developing empathy for one another. And that again is with intentionality. So when you're dealing with social and emotional learning and making that part of the curriculum, that's where you can work those lessons in so that you have empathy for others. And it's also about having tools so that it can be responded to more quickly. And one of the tools we use is a Stop It app, where students can report the bullying anonymously in a safe environment. And also we're able to deal with it. And it's also used when students feel like if they're going to hurt themselves, that they're able to use this app, or if someone knows of someone who's in such distress and going to hurt themselves, and we get alerted. And so we're able to act right away or get help to the home before, if it's outside of the school day, to help them. So there are things that we can do and put in place and work together to do that, but definitely no tolerance, and also learning and teaching for both parties involved.
How will you deal with the school year next year amidst possible COVID residue?
Residue indeed. Okay. And we're all still trying to figure that one out. And so I think it's one of those things that we have to go into it knowing that we have to be flexible. That's just it. We don't know what's going to be happening next. We don't know when it's all going to be resolved. We don't know when the vaccine's coming for the children. So we have to move forward in doing the best we can do to bring the children back, but also have the health mitigation strategies in place as long as we need them to, so that everyone has a safe learning environment. That's first and foremost, is not to sacrifice that, but also to look at what do we want to bring back and what do we want to do differently? I've said in my other focus groups today that normal for us might not have been normal for someone else. It could have been very stressful the way we were running schools, that maybe this virtual learning environment has worked for some students. So perhaps we need to look at having a division-wide virtual academy where you have teachers who do nothing but the virtual learning and instruct through that format, and students who are successful but have criteria in place that when they're not successful, they have to return to in-person learning. But keep it fluid and organic. Have one size does not fit all. And in a pandemic, we've definitely learned one thing, and one thing well, is that we can be flexible and think outside the box to make it happen. So we need to be ready to continue that this next year. Of course, I always think that, that in-person learning is such a robust way to learn, but for some students, the virtual learning is still the best model for them, and being able to be flexible and offer everything to the students.
Wonderful. Our district has significant declining enrollment, which will necessitate school reconfiguration. Being new in the community, how will you approach school reconfiguration? Please provide specific examples of this happening in prior districts where you have worked.
Okay. Well, the example I have is when they were doing it in Chesterfield, and the way that it was handled is you have to involve the community, and we're not all going to agree, that's for sure. But coming from the outside, having lived it in another division where it impacted not my school division, not my school area, but it was in the division. It really comes down to understand the community and the community needs, and making sure that our children have access to a school in their neighborhood, and maybe redesigning some of our schools. Maybe it's not so much school closures as it maybe is downsizing a few of the schools and moving them around. But again, from an outsider looking in, that is never a decision I would make alone. I'm a collaborator, and I get feedback, and I work with teams. At the end of the day, when a tough decision has to be made, yes. Can I make it? Yes. But it's always about having input. So I think it comes to where you take it out to the community. That's what we did in my other division. They would take it out to the community. You'd get the input, knowing that at the end of the day, it's a very personal experience and people are going to be on different sides of the fence on it. But if you look at the resources and how the division could maybe save resources by redistricting and redistributing things, that at the end of the day, if it's about what's best for students and the accessibility to things that our students need, then I think we can all agree to that and make the changes we need to make. So in the long run, we're benefiting more children and building the community that way.
How would you stand up against the political establishment trying to dictate terms of how to govern schools?
That happens everywhere. Okay, so that is for sure. We have this thing that we jokingly say in Virginia, unfunded mandates. And so what we do is we have a lobbyist who really stays informed of what's happening on the Hill for us in Richmond. And so we all work together as a group of superintendents. There's 132 of us in Virginia, and we group together and we write letters and we meet with our legislators, and we make sure they understand how what they're considering impacts our division. And we get the data to show them, and we let them know monetarily, and we also let them know just with programs and systems how it's impacting our children. And so it's about keeping them informed, because legislators, they mean well by it and they intend great things, but because they haven't lived our life and walked in our shoes as educators on the front lines, they don't understand the unintended consequences that will result in their legislation. So it's about joining together and lobbying for the things that you need and making sure they have the information. Do you win every fight? No. But at the end of the day, do you win the war? You hope so, because it still has to be what's best for kids. And so unless we're vocal and we have a clear understanding and line of communication to help them understand, then we're going to keep getting unfunded mandates, and we're going to keep getting mandates that really impact us negatively. So we have to be on the front lines and help them understand and let them know what we support and let them know what we're against and the why behind it, so that they can stand behind it and help their colleagues understand why we need it or don't need something.
Our district has had shared governance as part of our school culture since 1974. What are your thoughts about shared governance? What will you do to improve the shared governance culture within the district?
Yeah. Yes, I have discovered that as I've gone around the schools today, and in my research, that it's definitely site-based management here. And there is something to be said about that. Not every school division does that, and a lot of the models in Virginia don't do that. But that doesn't mean that it's wrong. It's just different. But the beauty of that model really is about the level of accountability and ownership that happens when you do that. And so when you look at a central office position, and what we do to support that is you have to determine what are the non-negotiables, what are the ones that have to be aligned for district at this level of scale, that have to be the non-negotiables that you have to be tight about. Usually those are two items. It's the curriculum and how you teach something, and not the how so much, but what you're going to teach. For example, I was telling that one group today that if we decide that we're teaching reading with the 5 components and that everyone has to teach it, that's the district level. But at the school level with their site-based management, then they're able to decide, what does that look like, sound like, and feel like in our building for our clientele? And that's where you want to make sure that they have the flexibility, the flexible accountability to be able to be innovative and creative, to figure out how they're going to deliver. Yes, we're going to teach these 5 modes of reading, but we get to decide how it best fits our kids, and the teachers get to still have their creativity. And then the elements that are more loose, that are really decided at the school level, because that's the nucleus of instruction. That's where all the action happens, is in the classroom. So it's about instruction is definitely their purview on how they deliver it, but also their interventions, how they circle back around and get the kids who are being unsuccessful. And then the other piece that the division does is the accountability piece. There are metrics in place that have to be, you have to be able to measure the progress of schools, and you have to have ways and key performance indicators so that we can celebrate together the wins and how we're getting there. So usually at the district level, it's the curriculum and accountability. And then at the school level, it's the instruction and the intervention. And so there is, again, that ownership, that freedom and flexibility, and that accountability. And I think that, again, if we're all working together off of the same strategic plan, and we're rolling it down to the school level, the one thing that I just throw caution at is to make sure that we're not doing so many different things, that we're not fulfilling the vision and the mission and the goals of the district, that we're all filtering it in with our own special flavor and flair at each school level, but that we're still working towards the same common goal of increasing student achievement, closing the achievement gaps, and increasing graduation rates.
This next question I really like. What do you think you'll enjoy about living and working here? And what do you see as a challenge living here?
Okay. Well, the fun part is there's lots of little restaurants that you've got to try, and all the different cuisines that you've got to try. And I surely miss that where I live now. It's going to be it's going to be fun. And I don't know, I might have to watch myself. I can't do too much taste testing here, right? So I got to stay a little bit healthy on that part. Self-care. But definitely, and just the accessibility, just to the celebrations and to the community activities, and to having that access to those experiences, and that our children can have that access to those experiences that sometimes rural divisions don't allow you. That's kind of what I miss from the Richmond area. We had accessibility to a lot of great productions and performances, and our children had opportunities to participate in things. And so I look forward to that. The challenge is that you also have all of that, and sometimes it can be distracting on what to focus on, especially when you have so many good people and community partners who want to help the schools and are offering to their services and their and donations and their time and money, and just really making sure that we've all prioritized that we're using all the resources that we have at our disposal in the best manner to serve all the needs of our students, and that we just don't get so inundated, that we're being purposeful in our resources and what we're using.
Please talk about your experience improving secondary schools. What do you think are some key ways that we can improve our secondary schools in terms of integrating diversity, improving academics, and creating strong school culture?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Secondary schools is really where our students start finding their voices, right? And so I think it's really a matter of making them a part of that. There are some models in Virginia, and one that I was a part of starting to create at one school is academies of learning. Maybe changing it up at the secondary level. We've had success, like I said, in other divisions in bringing it in. And in Page, we're just a little too small. And so that's the beauty of working in a larger school division. You can think a little bit larger, more globally. Like if children want to have pathways, like if they want to go in medicine, then have those academies built in the high schools where they could go to them, and then their English and their math and their history, it's all focused in the medical terms. So when you're going to do nonfiction reading, you're going to read medical journals or something like that. But then if you want to do business or business administration, then all your core classes follow that track. And so that you're training them up. It's much like the models that are in other countries where they start training the children up at the middle school year. So when they graduate from high school, they have the skill set and the knowledge to go get that job. So then if they want to further their education, they're still employable with the skill set. So I think that would be a very innovative way to kind of revamp our high schools and get that diversity going, because we can look at global models of how they've done that and integrated here in Salt Lake, but also provide choices for our kids and make it relevant. I think that's how you change the culture, because one thing the teenagers want is they want to know, why do I need to know why I need to know what X is or what Y is, or, why do I need to know where that is when I can just Google it? And so making it more real and more applicable, that's where, the CTE world just has it down right. You learn the theoretical content knowledge you need to know, and then you apply it. You use it every day. Wouldn't it be phenomenal if our high schools were all like that, where they're able to put it into play by a career focus in an academy of what they're going towards, that everything that they do is towards that culminating capstone project at the end. And when they go out to get that job, look at all the skill sets and experiences they've had when they get to the end of that journey. So that's one way to do it. And also to take time to celebrate those cultural differences and take ownership in it. When we were at the tech center, all of our different divisions had their little logo and their teams, and they wore it to their home schools before they went to the tech center as a badge of pride. And this is what I'm involved in. This is what I'm part of. So it's about building those communities within the schools that children can participate in and belong, because students need to belong to something, or they'll find something to belong to, right? So in schools, we want to make sure that we provide that with either after school activities and I was one that I always like to build the activities in the school day, because again, I didn't want to marginalize students who had to go home and take care of siblings or had to work. I wanted to make sure that when we were doing the enrichment periods and we were doing the interventions, that the kids who were on track and doing well, they also got to do fun stuff. Like they got to go hang out in the music room, or they got to go hang out and, write music, or they got to go work on art projects. And then on Fridays, it was rotating club days. So every child could be in 4 different clubs, regardless of their transportation, of their childcare issues, or of their work schedules. They had the opportunity to be a part and a belong of something. And we got great dividends in that. It's been a long day now, folks. Okay. Dividends. And it really helped our Latino population, which was our biggest minority population at the time, to be full active participants in the school experience by building it in the school day. So those are just some initial thoughts I have, but I certainly would want to have more robust conversations with folks to see what path we could go down and if that would be viable here for sure.
Please give an example of how you have balanced conflicting needs of teachers and families.
Yeah, that's a tough one, because we're sometimes on different pages on that. And so it's really about, you need to listen to both parties and you need to help the parents understand. I had a parents advisory committee where we were able to really explain the side of the teachers as to why we needed to do things a certain way, because you need to back your teachers, but you also need to listen to your parents. So you need to, and sometimes we were wrong. Sometimes educators were wrong. Sometimes our approach on things or assignment was too long, or my goodness, we didn't need to do all 20 math problems and we only need to do 10. And so how do you address that? Or even when it's about grading practices. So it's about, again, as you see a theme evolving here, it's about the communication. And again, when people understand the parameters in which we have to work, they at least can understand it a little bit more to support it, even if I still wish we didn't have to start at school then. And so it really comes down to, like, we had an issue with, starting our calendar during the fair week, and some of our teachers were against it, some of our families were against it, or some of our teachers were for it. And so we incorporated half days. We split the diff, we split the difference. So our families could still have their kids participate in the in the fair, and we could still have school. We could start that first week of school. They were able to go half days, and they were able to, get their procedures down in place, get their syllabus. They were able to meet their teachers, they get the routines down. And then the teachers afterwards were like, oh my gosh, that was the best thing ever. It eased our kids back into it. I didn't think I was going to like it. And so while you had some contingencies of teachers who really wanted it, you had enough, you always have a small contingency that doesn't want something, right? And so it was a matter of bringing the families together with the teachers and making a model that was really a compromise. And we let everyone go after the half day. We didn't even have teachers stay. Everybody go to the fair, go do what you need to do, and let's support the community and support our FFA A kids and help them out there at the fair.
If you were to become superintendent of our district, what would you do to ensure the district not only meets, but exceeds all parameters and resolutions laid out in the Students with Disabilities, the Inclusive Schools Resolution that was unanimously passed by the board on April of 2020 to ensure meaningful classroom, school, community, and district level inclusion is occurring for all students, not just those who know how to advocate for it, and including not just for mild, moderate disabilities, but for our more complex intellectual, physical, and behavioral students as well.
Right. So you need to, first of all, you have to inspect what you expect. So you have to have monitoring procedures in place. So what the resolution outlines, you have to make sure that you're then monitoring it at least, often enough to make sure and ensure that everyone is being compliant with what the expectations are. And even before that, you have to make sure that people have a clear understanding of what the expectations are. What is that resolution really detailing? And what does that feel like and sound like in the real world in a school building and for our students of different varying levels of disability? And then you find ways to make that inclusion happen. And that's a team effort. You have to think outside the box. You have to be visionary thinkers and in order to find opportunities and to get the accommodations needed so that the students with disabilities can play alongside or work and learn alongside those without the disabilities, and that the accommodations and also to make our gen ed students to be more empathetic and to be service leaders and to be able to help the students who are joining them. And sometimes that might be in small increment steps. But again, you have to look at what the resolution is really saying and then look at your practices and say, is that what we're really doing? Is that what we're really saying? Again, it's taking those internal audits to see what to fix, but to make sure that when they can, even that with the most severe disabilities, what can they participate in, and to make sure that that happens. But that takes intentionality again, and it takes planning and it takes moderating, because even though we don't mean to, sometimes we start so many projects or programs or resolutions that unless you assign someone to keep the eye on the prize, you lose focus of that. And so that needs to be a reoccurring thing. So when you have direct reports out and I'm meeting with the cabinet, that we're knowing how that's going. So every quarter there should be an update on the metrics and how we're meeting it and what we're doing and where we need to improve ourselves.
How will you ensure that the diverse student body that the district serves will have access to educational equity?
And again, that goes back to doing an equity audit. You really have to pare back the layers. I know when I was looking at the school course offerings, when I was doing my research for the division, I noticed that some things are offered at some schools and some are not offered at the other schools. But then it comes down to, I learned today that a lot of them are being bused and have the opportunities to still participate in it. So it's about looking at that, but looking at it with a fine-tooth comb to see, are we truly saying they have access to it? Or are there other barriers? Are there criteria to getting into a program? Are there other criteria that are by its nature, the way it's designed, are excluding students? When you look at different programs and other divisions, I know we've had the same thing. When you look at like governor schools, those magnet schools that we call in Virginia governor schools, you have to look at your practice and of acceptance and who you accept. And are you, by unintended consequences, are you excluding people? And so again, when you do that audit, you got to peel back that layers and look at, do they have accessibility, or do they have accessibility, but because it entails a bus ride and transportation and going here, and that they're not able to participate because of the unintended consequence that it gets them back so late in the day and they have home responsibilities that they have to take care of. So again, you can't just go, well, we offer it and we bus them there. you also have to look at it and go, okay, that's great, but look who's participating and who's not. Why are those that we're offering it to, why are they not participating? And digging deeper, really data mining it down to that level as to why they're not participating. What do we need to do differently to ensure equal access to all students for everything that we offer?
Wonderful. Okay. What creative ideas do you have to improve interaction between students and their teachers during their school day while maintaining safety standards?
Yeah, it's about having fun. It's about building relationships. It's about knowing your students. And that's where teachers really have to build that safety environment, that culture of safety where they can talk about themselves and share out. There should never be a student that doesn't have an adult that really knows them. That if we were to put up all the pictures of the students on the wall and ask teachers to put a sticky note on each photograph of what they knew about the child, it would be shameful if there ever was a picture that only had one sticky note or zero sticky notes on there. And so you want to make sure that you take time to visit with the kids. And so again, when you have those built-in seminar times or remediation times in the day, and you're able to work on social and emotional, and you're able to work on the profile of a graduate with the 5 C's of how to be a good citizen and a good collaborator and communicator, that you use that time to get to know your kids. And so one of the ways to do that is having a mentor and having that rotation where you're with that teacher all through all 4 years for that particular segment of time in the schedule, that you're able to rotate in and get to those deeper conversation and build those relationships and build those friendships, and then learn to laugh. And I know when I was a teacher, when I trip over like the overhead projector, now I'm dating myself, I know, but over the overhead projector and whatnot, learn to laugh at yourself and learn to have fun with the kids, and learn to be a part of the child's world and where they're at. I'm a little bit of a deficit now that our children are grown and out of the household. I don't feel like I'm quite as hip with the latest slang and the music and the latest inventions. I've really got to learn that TikTok thing a lot better now. But just being real with it and being in tune to what's in their world, and basically having that respect, but having fun with them and entering their world sometimes and trying to understand. And even with our goofiness, when they look at us as just we're all old people, that we're able to still relate and have fun. I know one time when I was singing the words to a song and doing the music video actions to it, I thought the kids were going to not get themselves off the floor with laughter. And so it's about having fun and showing the human side of yourself and allowing the children to show their sides and making those memories together. And with that, they will do more for you in the long run. I got to share one experience where I had a teacher who was a diehard, I'm not going to smile until December. And he was not going to have fun. Kids don't deserve it. They are so rowdy. And as his supervisor, I was like, why don't you do more games and more activities and more interactive things? Again, when I say games, learning activities, right? And I said, have fun and laugh with your children. And I bet you they'll come around and you'll enjoy it more. And lo and behold, he took my advice and he did it. It was hard for him because that was out of his comfort zone, because he wanted straight rows, do as I say, don't talk, we're going to do this. And then he saw that the more fun he had with the children, the actual better classroom management he had with the children. Because when it came time to settle down, they did it because they had the fun time. And you can have fun and still learn, and there's times to be serious, but there's times to have fun. And I truly believe that if we're going to build that love of learning for our students, we've got to make it fun to be in our classrooms.
How do you understand the impact of the collective trauma our nation has endured on our students and their engagement in education? What experience do you bring around trauma-informed schools and/or organizations?
Yeah, I really think, the experience I bring to it is we've been focused, our work in Page County, about really building our trauma-informed resiliencies in our schools and as educators, and really making that the focus of our work this past year, and really studying it to understand it. And when I did a convocation with teachers and our staff and our whole staff, it was about really understanding, what does trauma look like, and to how does it look like in all our lives. So we actually took the ACE test, the Adverse Childhood Experiences test, and we put it up there so that people could understand what experiences we've all had in our lives. We've all experienced trauma from one extent to another. And then using the example of other children who look like the epitome of having it all together, and then to reveal to them that that child really had scored an 8 out of 10 on the ACE score, and to not take it lightly. And that was really a jaw dropper for a lot of our staff. And If I could, I'd really like to have the families take the childhood adverse, the ACE test, the adverse childhood experiences. But some families don't want to do that because it reveals a lot of a family environment, but it empowers us to understand what's going on with the child. So to have some sort of survey to understand the trauma experiences that people have been through, but it takes learning and it takes practicing. So like I said earlier, we practice these activities, and we had rich, robust discussions about it. And then we practiced it and we did it with our staff, and then our staff did it with our students. And we were very selective in what we did, because these events have been traumatic for our students. I mean, taking away their senior year last year and abruptly closing schools, well, that turned everybody on their heads. And then this year, the anticipation of coming back to normalcy of what we thought was normal, and it's not happening. And so our children are resilient, but we still need to provide them the supports and that they need to be even more successful, because the way we learn is now changed. And for some children, they're floundering in this model. And so we have to give them those supports and help them. But even the national events that have been happening have a big impact on our students. So we have to take time out of our curriculum sometimes to allow our children to have these discussions and to be able to facilitate those discussions as a facilitator, because we don't pick sides, but we facilitate everything so that children can express themselves in a safe environment. But it's going to be a long haul. This is work that we've got to continue for quite a while. It's not going to, just because the pandemic ends, that doesn't end that work.
And we are at 8:42 your time, so we got about 8 minutes left.
Okay.
What is your position on full inclusion for students with disabilities, and what experience do you have to make? I'm just reading this. What is your position on full inclusion for students with disabilities, and what experience do you have to make this happen in Salt Lake City School District?
Right. Well, my experience has been that we've pushed for full inclusion. In one particular division that I won't name right now, is that there is a lot of exclusion happening, and a lot of children who had disabilities and some who just had behavioral issues, and they were putting in self-contained classrooms. And that was just not acceptable, that our children needed to have those experiences. And so we had to redesign the master schedule, redesign the collaborative model with our SPED teachers to provide the supports in the gen ed classroom. And it really needs to be seamless. It needs to be that when you have the two teachers in the classroom, that both teachers are contributing to the learning and progress of our students, and that our children can progress and learn. And so sometimes, unfortunately, it becomes where the SPED teacher becomes like the para instead of being the bona fide teacher in the classroom. And the best compliment you can give a team is when that nobody knows who the SPED students are in the classroom or which teacher is the SPED teacher, that they're working equally with all children. Now, with children who have more severe disabilities, obviously that's more obvious who that is that's needing those services. But to have it where you have enough staff in the classroom to help give that child the level of attention they're going to need to participate to the level that they're best able to, but to at least have that exposure and to provide that support for the classroom teacher who also has to attend to the needs of all the other children in the classroom. That goes a long way with my philosophy of allowing children to take a swing at bat. It's just like with our ESOL kids, to make sure that they could take AP classes, or when we had IB and we let everybody, regardless if they were taking getting an IB diploma, but to sit in that level of class of rigor. The same is to be said of our SPED children, to not be isolated, but to have exposure and have that experience, even though they might have some deficits that might make it harder for them to master certain material, but that we find those accommodations, but we still expose them to that learning environment and to the learning that's happening in that classroom, so that eventually to either help them, or at least they'll be able to do the best that they can do at that time and take it forward to the next level. I've seen in Page County, we had a particular, again, I to keep it more confidential, not to give in too many details, but we had a tale of two students, basically, where one was kept a little bit more restrictive, and some of that was part of the parents' wish, a little bit more restrictive, same disabilities and kind of issues in play, and another child where it was more inclusionary, it was full inclusion. And when you look at the few years that have passed, how that child has flourished because of the inclusion, and how the other child is still struggling. And that is just shameful. But again, it's an IEP team decision, and it's not just our decision. We also have to have the parents agree to it. So we follow the model that the parent wants at the time, or the team determines. And so, you have to work with that. But definitely, I've seen the benefits of the full inclusion and what that does for children, and how it really accelerates their learning and gives them that support and that exposure that they are just as much deserving of as other children are.
Thank you. And I love this next question. How do you intend to make Salt Lake City School District excellent?
Excellent. Well, I'm a data person, so I tend to look at that data, quantitative or qualitative, to see, are we making the mark? And the thing about being excellent, it's okay to be where you are today, but we don't want to be in the same spot next year. And the only way to know that we're not in the same spot is to look at the data to see, are we adding growth? Are we showing value added in all the things that we're attempting to do? And to hold ourselves accountable, and to be innovative, and to be creative, and to think outside the box, and set the stage for other urban school districts to follow, to be that kind of creative and really turn it upside down, because this pandemic has turned the education world upside down. Salt Lake City can do the same thing by being innovative and thinking outside the box, but checking those metrics and making sure that it's just not us patting ourselves on the back, but that we're looking at the data to say, by golly, we have grown, we have done this. Look what we've accomplished in a year's time. Again, it's okay where we're at, but we always want to achieve for that excellence. When that bar is here, we move it higher. We keep going for bigger and better, and bringing every child along for the ride as well.
All right. And our last question, what are some of your goals for Salt Lake City School District?
Okay. Well, the goals are, I have about 5 of them of what the goals are, because the role of a superintendent, let me just clarify what the role of a superintendent is. So the role of a superintendent is to provide that supportive climate and culture with processes and procedures and systems in place to develop an aligned school system that impacts student achievement, close the achievement gap, and increases graduation rates. So the goals then become this: to have strong school board and superintendent relationships, to build a high impact team, to then improve student achievement and close the achievement gap. That has to be the second thing that you focus on, because that is what guides our work as a school board. We have to be focused on that. And then you also have to build trust and confidence in your community and with your staff and all your stakeholders, and being responsive with action, that when we see things that aren't working and we hear concerns, that we have a way to disseminate the information, or to disseminate that we heard you, your voice was heard. We might need some time to react on it, but we'll at least acknowledge it. So build that trust component. And then along the way, you're building efficient and effective systems and processes, because we are a organization. We are a business organization with a lot of employees, and we have clients that we have to take care of, which are our students and our families. And so you have to make sure that there's not that frustration with just the simple things of running an organization, that you can fix and get that out of the way. And so with that, to complement that, you have to have a climate and a culture where there's safety in expressing diverse opinions, but there's also accountability, that we feel that accountability and we take ownership in that accountability. So those will be my goals. And it all works together, because the board decides the what, the central office team and the schools all do the how we make it come to life. So at the forefront will always be about student achievement, closing the achievement gap, and improving graduation rates, with a good high impact governance team, with a supportive and positive climate and culture, and with efficient operating systems and procedures in place, so that we can get down to the nitty gritty of protecting that instructional core, of having teachers with high efficacy and content knowledge and supporting them, coupled with students who are exposed to high rigorous content, regardless of what levels they're in, and students who are actively engaged. So with those 3 components in the instructional core, I'm all about protecting the instructional core with those 5 ancillary components to support it. And to that end, we will make improvements to help all children be successful.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. We are right at 8:50. So thank you so much.
Perfect.
And thank you for all of your interviewing today and answering all of our questions. We really appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.